going on, everyone? Mr. Octagonal here. Now, today we are back with our 3 Minutes on the Clock podcast. I believe we're at episode 10 or 11 now. I'm not entirely sure, but I appreciate all the support I've gotten throughout this series. If you guys want to check out previous mock drafts, NBA mock drafts, or my ultimate draft guide that I uploaded last Friday, then make sure to check the playlist. So today we have another mock draft. I believe this is my 6th NFL mock draft, I want to say. I do have trades in here. I have some pretty interesting trades. It is 2 rounds, like pretty much all the other ones. I want to eventually do a 7th round mock draft this year. I'm not going to go in depth on every pick, maybe the first 3 rounds or something. I'm not going to be talking about the 167th pick in depth. So yeah, without further ado, let's get right on into it. First pick, I have a trade. The New York Giants will be moving up to the first pick and selecting Kyler Murray, quarterback, Arizona. The Cardinals will be getting pick 6, pick 17, which is the pick that the Giants got in the Odell deal, 96, which they also got in the Odell deal, and then 181, which is their 6th rounder. So what I'm thinking is, I don't think the Cardinals actually want Kyler Murray that bad. I just think that they are putting on an act to make it seem like they want Kyler Murray, so other teams that also want Kyler are maybe a little bit more desperate, willing to give up a little more, and I really like how Arizona is playing it. I think Josh Rosen is in on the act, hence why he deleted all of his Cardinals Instagram photos, and I just think this is all adding up, and the Cardinals don't actually really want Kyler. I think the Giants could definitely use him. Obviously, Eli is not the guy anymore, and it seems like they don't realize that, but they need to realize that. Murray's a very explosive player. He had a solid pro day at Oklahoma. Not the biggest, obviously, 5'10", around 205, but he's super explosive. The athleticism is there. We didn't get to see him run a 40, but I would say probably low 4.3s is where it would be. Obviously, the college production is there. He won a Heisman Trophy and was really good for them. I think this is a very interesting move for the Giants. With the second pick, the San Francisco 49ers select Nick Bosa, edge rusher, Ohio State. Obviously, with Bosa not going number 1, this is likely going to be an easy pick for San Francisco, as Bosa is the best prospect in this draft according to many scouts. The Niners did just trade for D. Moore from Kansas City, so I think a Moore and Bosa edge pairing would be very exciting. Not to mention, in that front 7, you got DeForest Buckner, Solomon Thomas, if you find a way to use him, Eric Armstead. And then Fred Warner at middle linebacker, that's really nice. San Francisco's defense will be filthy next year. With the third pick, the New York Jets select DK Metcalf, wide receiver, Ole Miss. Definitely more of a surprising pick, but a very interesting one, as the Jets have made plenty of moves this free agency. C.J. Mosley, Le'Veon Bell, Jamison Crowder. They traded for Kalichi Osemele. Their offense is a lot better, but they don't have a legit number 1 receiver, as Crowder is more of a slot guy. Quincy Enunwa, can't count on him. Robbie Anderson, can't count on him. And I think Metcalf has superstar potential. I think he's the best offensive player in this year's draft. I think he's debatably top 5 talent. And the Jets are getting someone who can be a superstar. Superstar receivers can lead to superstar quarterbacks. And with the 4th pick, the Oakland Raiders select Josh Allen, edge rusher, Kentucky. Allen had phenomenal production this year at Kentucky, 17.5 sacks. The Raiders amassed 13 sacks last year, which is horrendous. The next lowest was 30. The Raiders know they need to improve their front 7 and their pass rush, missing the production they had from Khalil Mack, and Josh Allen can bring that. The 5th pick, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Montez Sweat, edge rusher, Mississippi State. Sweat is an athletic 4'4", 240-yard dash. The Bucs need more pass rush, as they don't really have a legit number 1 edge rusher. Levante David, not really a pass rusher. Noah Spence hasn't really developed. Gerald McCoy at defensive tackle, solid pass rusher, but he might get traded, and he's not an edge rusher. So they can get Sweat, who can hop in right away. His speed, his burst, and his athleticism, I think, can lead him to become a really good pass rusher. Solid production at Mississippi State, but no one's draft stock since the end of the season has increased more than his. Phenomenal Senior Bowl, phenomenal combine. He very well could fall in the top 5. With the 6th pick, the Arizona Cardinals select Quinnen Williams, defensive lineman, Alabama. The Cardinals trade down, and Quinnen Williams falls into their laps. Phenomenal move for Arizona, getting, I think, the second best player in this draft class in Quinnen Williams. Not to mention they get plenty of other draft picks and other assets. I love it for Arizona. You get an interior presence in the middle of your defensive line. Phenomenal season this year at Alabama. Him, Chandler Jones, Terrell Suggs. That is scary. With the 7th pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars select T.J. Hockenson, tight end, Iowa. The Jags no longer need a quarterback, and I assume this is probably my first mock draft that I don't have them getting a quarterback in the first round, obviously with the signing of Nick Foles. So I think this pick very well could be Hockenson. Austin Seferian-Jenkins didn't really work out, and you want to give Foles as much help as you can. The Jaguars have a very talented defense, but need help on offense. They have talent. They have decent players on their O-line. A.J. Cann, Brandon Linder, Andrew Norwell, Cam Robinson. Not a bad O-line outside of right tackle. Receiver, they have some decent players. D.D. Westbrook, D.J. Chark, who I really like. Is Keelan Cole a free agent? I'm not sure. He might be. Leonard Fournette. That's a talented offense, but Nick Foles loves his tight end. Zach Ertz was used heavily with Nick Foles in that offense. Hockenson, on many people's boards, is a top 10 prospect, not mine. I'm not as high on Hockenson as other people, but I do really like him still. He is a very good pass catcher, very good receiver, and he can also run block. He does it all. Phenomenal pick for the Jaguars. And then with the 8th pick, my Detroit Lions select Devin White, linebacker, LSU. The Lions did just sign Trey Flowers, and I would not rule edge rusher out at 8. However, I think the pick could be Devin White. Jared Davis was drafted 2 years ago at middle linebacker. Solid player, but I expect him to sort of move more to a pass rusher role. I would say he's probably better at rushing the passer or stopping the run rather than pass coverage, making tackles and stuff. And Devin White, 3-down linebacker, sideline-to-sideline player, very talented player, super good combine. He ran a 4.42 40-yard dash, I want to say, in that range. And overall is a very good player. And as a Lions fan, while it's not a big need compared to other positions, with him being, in my opinion, one of the best players on the board, I'd be happy with it. The 9th pick, the Buffalo Bills select Andre Dillard, offensive tackle, Washington State. The Bills have helped Josh Allen, sort of, in the offseason. They've made some moves, but they need a legit blind side for him. Dillard is a very athletic player. Like Montez Sweat, his stock has soared since the end of the season. Very good Senior Bowl, very good combine. And Josh Allen, while he's shown flashes, while I am personally a big fan of him, he's very raw still, and he needs as much talent around him as he can get. The more talent on that Bills offense, the better Allen will be. Now, we have another trade here with the 10th pick. I have the Miami Dolphins moving up with Denver. Denver goes down to pick 13. They get the Dolphins' 3rd-round pick this year as well as next year. Meanwhile, Miami gets pick 10 as well as Denver's 7th-round pick. Solid value trade, I would say, for Denver, but the Dolphins, they know they need a quarterback, and with Dwayne Haskins on the board at 10, it makes sense. Haskins had a phenomenal year at Ohio State. Very good in the pocket, phenomenal arm. Out of the pocket, scrambling, doesn't really have it. Limited mobility. It's not that he's like Tom Brady mobile, but he's not particularly mobile, especially for an African-American quarterback. I know that's the stereotype. Haskins does not really fit that stereotype. He is very accurate, phenomenal production this year at Ohio State, and the Dolphins' current starting quarterback is Jake Rudock, former Lion, with Ryan Tannehill being traded to Tennessee yesterday. So they have Rudock and Luke Falk, and that's it. So obviously the Dolphins need to get a quarterback in the draft, and I think Dwayne Haskins could very well be that guy. With the 11th pick, the Cincinnati Bengals select Devin Bush, linebacker, Michigan. Bush has definitely risen up draft boards, especially with a stellar combine. Very athletic, good leader on the Michigan defense, and the Bengals definitely need leadership, especially on that side of the football. They've had many problems when it comes to leadership and discipline over the years, and I think Devin Bush makes a ton of sense. The Bengals need a revamped linebacking core, as Vontaze Burfict, for only semi-talented linebacker, he can't stay on the field when it comes to injuries and suspensions and stuff. And yeah, the Bengals O-line sucks, but so does their linebacking core, and pretty much their whole team sucks. And then with the 12th pick, the Green Bay Packers select Clelin Ferrell, edge rusher from Clemson. Very talented player. I don't think I've had him mocked at the Packers once, and as a Lions fan, I'd be kind of sad about this pick, obviously, since I don't like Green Bay at all. But Ferrell's had a lot of college production for Clemson, as he didn't run too many drills at the combine, and he's not an overly athletic player. Doesn't have a crazy ceiling, but I like his floor. And with the state that Green Bay's defense is in, especially with getting Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith, you don't need a superstar edge rusher. An edge rushing group of Clelin Ferrell, Zadarius Smith, Preston Smith, and Kyler Fackrell, that is really nice. I would assume Ferrell would have his hand in the dirt. I would assume Preston Smith would probably have his hand in the dirt. And then the more of the linebacker guys would be Zadarius Smith and Kyler Fackrell. And that is scary for opposing offensive lines. Yeah, the Packers don't need an edge rusher as bad as they did a week ago, but getting one doesn't hurt. I know they've invested a ton of money in it, but the more the merrier, right? With the 13th pick, the Denver Broncos select Ed Oliver, defensive tackle, Houston. This is the pick via the Miami Dolphins deal for them to move up and get Dwayne Haskins. Oliver is a presence in the interior of Houston's defensive line. Very athletic, very good run stopper, and pairing him with Bradley Chubb and Von Miller, my goodness, that would suck if you're an AFC West quarterback. Having Bradley Chubb and Von Miller getting to the quarterback and having Ed Oliver stuffing blocks, creating double teams, and stopping the run, that would be without a doubt the scariest defensive line in the NFL. And if Chubb and Oliver can develop like they're supposed to, that could be one of the scariest D-lines in NFL history. Love this pick for Denver. Outstanding selection. He's, in my opinion, the best player in this draft class. Even though he wasn't great this year in Houston, there are a few minor red flags. I wouldn't even call them red flags, but altercation with his coach, missed time with injuries. I don't think it's too big of a deal. I think he's still the best player in this class. With the 14th pick, the Atlanta Falcons select Rashawn Gary, edge rusher in Michigan. I think this is a very intriguing fit, as the Falcons need help both at defensive tackle as well as edge rusher. They have Grady Jarrett on the franchise tag. They have Takk McKinley at edge rusher, who I really like, but they need help there. And Rashawn Gary can really do both, in my opinion. I think he's a little bit more of an edge rusher who's maybe a big edge rusher rather than an undersized defensive tackle, but I think either spot would work. Gary had a very solid combine, and I don't see him going much lower than this. While Gary did not have a great junior year at Michigan, it's because of the Desmond King rule, which is basically either getting double-teamed or, in King's case, not getting the ball thrown to him. I've mentioned this before in mock drafts, but the Desmond King rule is Desmond King would have been a first-round pick in the 2016 draft, a corner from Iowa. He ended up staying in school, and in 2017, no quarterback threw the ball near him, and because of that, he fell to the 5th round where the Chargers snagged him, and after his second year, he just made the first team All-Pro. So, I think a lot of people are hating on Gary for a similar reason, and I don't think that Gary gets the credit that he deserves, and I think him, along with McKinley and Grady Jarrett, could be really nice. With the 15th pick, for Washington Redskins select Drew Lock, quarterback, Missouri. Yes, they did just trade for Case Keenum. However, they want to start building for their future quarterback now. They have Case Keenum, who can be a bridge this year. You don't have to start Drew Lock right away, but I think it's better to get it over with now, since especially there's not that many other great players the Broncos could get, or not the Broncos, the Redskins. Yeah, there are guys they could get, but I think Locke makes the most sense here. Locke is a very consistent, maybe consistent is not the right word. He's a very balanced quarterback. He had some flaws shown throughout the season, but he's well-rounded, pretty athletic. He tested better than I expected, and overall is very balanced, sort of like Alex Smith is in a way. Locke won't be a star, but he'll be a good player. With the 16th pick, the Carolina Panthers select Noah Fant, tight end from Iowa, as Fant is one of my favorite prospects in this year's draft class, and Carolina now needs a tight end with Greg Olsen retiring and entering the Monday Night Football booth, as tight end was a huge role in Carolina's offense with Olsen, and Cam Newton needs that guy, and Fant is an athletic freak of nature. Reminds me a lot of Evan Ingram coming out of Ole Miss a couple years ago. And Noah Fant is one of my favorite prospects in this year's draft. Love the pick for Carolina. The 17th pick, the Arizona Cardinals select Jonah Williams, offensive lineman, Alabama. So the Cardinals trade down and land Quinnen and Jonah Williams. That is insane. The Cardinals have won this draft without a doubt. Williams, I think, is a top 10 player in this draft class. He's my number 2 offensive lineman behind Cody Ford from Oklahoma, who's still on the board. As Williams has had a lot of production at Alabama, you can put him at left tackle, right guard, wherever you need him. And the Cardinals have holes at pretty much all of those positions except for maybe right tackle. Is that where DJ Humphries plays? I don't know if he plays right or left tackle, but he's a okay player. He's really their only young developmental guy on their offensive line. So basically the Cardinals' offensive line sucks, and they need some improving. With the 18th pick, the Minnesota Vikings select Jawan Taylor, offensive tackle, Florida. I'm a little bit surprised that I had Taylor falling this far, but if I think about it, the teams that needed offensive linemen either needed a position more, like the Dolphins, who just lost their right tackle in Jawan James, but they need to get themselves a quarterback. A team like Denver, they could use a right tackle maybe a week ago, but now they have Jawan James. So he falls here to 18, where the Minnesota Vikings snag him. Their offensive line is a mess. Their only young potential players are Brian O'Neill and Pat Elflein, and both of them are still giant question marks. So the Vikings need to invest in their offensive line. They cut Mike Remmers, so got to get someone who can play on that right side, and that could be Jawan Taylor. Very athletic, like his ceiling. He can start day one. With the 19th pick, the Tennessee Titans select Brian Burns, edge rusher from Florida State. That should say Florida State. As the Titans have mainly invested in their offense this free agency, getting guys like Roger Saffold, Adam Humphries. So in the draft, I think they're going to focus on defense and getting the Florida State Seminole edge rusher in Burns, who's a very well-rounded player. Good combine. I want to say he ran a 4.52. You can play with him with his hand in or out of the dirt, I think. And overall, solid selection for Tennessee. With the 20th pick, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Greedy Williams, cornerback from LSU. Steal at 20 for the Steelers. I don't know how Greedy Williams falls, but he does nonetheless, and the Steelers snag him. They need help at cornerback. They did just sign Steven Nelson. Whoop-de-doo. Steven Nelson, solid player, but he's not that great. And Williams is 6'2". He has the length. He has ball skills. He's good in coverage. This is a great selection for Pittsburgh. With the 21st pick, the Seattle Seahawks select Cody Ford, offensive lineman from Oklahoma. The Seahawks need help with their offensive line, and they're getting the versatile Ford who can play left tackle, left guard, right tackle, right guard. I'm pretty sure he played mostly right tackle at Oklahoma, but he can play pretty much all of those positions, and Seattle needs help on their offensive line. Yeah, Russell Wilson doesn't really need a great offensive line, and they have the number 1 rushing offense in the NFL, but Wilson isn't getting any younger. Plus, we really don't know how committed he is to staying in Seattle, and getting a better offensive line would help, especially investing in someone like Ford, who I think is the best one in this draft class. Phenomenal production at Oklahoma, one of the biggest reasons why Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray have been able to succeed, win Heisman trophies, and both of them likely as number 1 overall picks. So I think this is a very nice pickup for Seattle. With the 22nd pick, the Baltimore Ravens select Zach Allen, edge rusher of Boston College. The Ravens lost so many key players on their defense. T. Sizzle, Zadarius Smith, Eric Weddle, C.J. Mosley. Yeah, they did pick up Earl Thomas, but their front 7 is a lot worse. They still have some decent players on their front 7. Willie Henry maybe could develop. Michael Pierce is a good player, but outside of that, they don't really have much talent there. They need to improve it. And Zach Allen, he can get to the quarterback. He can, I don't know if he'll replace the full production of Zadarius Smith and Terrell Suggs. Definitely won't replace the leadership that Suggs had, but getting some young blood on their defensive line, especially someone who can get to the quarterback, makes sense for Baltimore. With the 23rd pick, the Houston Texans select Dalton Risner, offensive lineman from Kansas State. The Texans have not really improved their offensive line at all this offseason, which makes no sense. And unlike Russell Wilson, we know Deshaun Watson could definitely benefit from a good offensive line. Yeah, Watson's mobile like Russell Wilson, but he's not quite there yet when it comes to Russell Wilson's awareness. And the Texans' offensive line was dookie last year. I'm pretty sure Deshaun Watson got knocked down more than anyone in the NFL. He tore his ACL as a rookie, and if he tears that ACL again, that could be trouble. Look at RG3. So the Texans need to focus on their offensive line, and Risner's a player who I really like. He can play pretty much any position on the O-line. Very talented player. With the 24th pick, the Oakland Raiders select Marquise Hollywood Brown, wide receiver, Oklahoma. This has to be my favorite pick in this mock draft. I've had Brown going to the Raiders in almost every mock draft, and now that they have Antonio Brown, this pick makes even more sense because Antonio and Marquise Brown are blood-related cousins. So having them on the same team would be so much fun. Yeah, the Raiders did just sign Tyrell Williams. They did just sign J.J. Nelson. Both of them are deep threats, can stretch the field. Nelson is known for his speed, but Marquise Brown is a better version of J.J. Nelson. Nelson is not a phenomenal player. Marquise Brown. I don't know where I got Wilson from. Marquise Brown has phenomenal straight line speed, stretched the field for Oklahoma. Him, along with Tyrell Williams and Antonio Brown, that's a scary receiving corps for Derek Carr and John Gruden's offense. And obviously the cousin connection between Brown and Marquise makes it that much more fun. With the 25th pick, the Philadelphia Eagles select Josh Jacobs, running back, Alabama. The Eagles are not in a great position at running back. They have not signed anyone in free agency. Tevin Coleman got 2 years, $10 million from the Niners. I don't know how the Eagles did not offer more. Coleman is a phenomenal player and could have been really good in this offense. Who do they have? Jay Ajayi, who's a free agent, coming off an ACL tear, probably not going to be back. They have Josh Adams, who was the main running back last year, an undrafted rookie for Notre Dame, who I like, but not going to be the long-term guy. Darren Sproles, his bones are made of literal glass, so the Eagles need a legit number one running back, and that can be Josh Jacobs, who I've seen go a lot higher in mock drafts. Jacobs didn't get the most touches at Alabama, as Damian Harris and Najee Harris were more of a focal backs, whereas Jacobs was sort of the third option. But when Jacobs got the ball, he was electric. Phenomenal season this year at Alabama. He did not participate in the combine, I don't think. I think he was hurt. So I like this pick for Philly, getting themselves a legit running back. They need to do it, and Jacobs is the number one on most people's boards. With the 26th pick, the Indianapolis Colts select N'Keal Harry, wide receiver, Arizona State. I've had this pick mocked a lot. I think the Colts need to go receiver in the first round. They have T.Y. Hilton, and that's about it. Get yourself another weapon for Andrew Luck in that offense. As Luck, he has some talented weapons. He has Marlon Mack, Nyheim Hines, T.Y. Hilton, Eric Ebron, Jack Doyle, but they need to get themselves another receiver. They have the deep threat in T.Y. Hilton, so now it's time to get someone more of a short route guy, good hands, but not necessarily an insane deep threat. Someone who doesn't have a crazy good ceiling, but he has a nice floor in N'Keal Harry. Love this pick for Indianapolis. With the 27th pick, the Oakland Raiders select Jonathan Abrams, safety, Mississippi State. Haven't really mocked Abrams super high. However, I do think there's a chance he could be the first safety off the board. Deontay Thompson is sort of losing his stock a little. Nasir Adderley is a giant question mark. And Abrams, he had a good combine, very athletic, hard hitter, good run stopper. And when you yell, "The Raiders," you'll think of Jonathan Abrams. He fits that mold. He can force fumbles. He can make plays. With the 28th pick, the Los Angeles Chargers select Garrett Bradbury, center, North Carolina State. I believe their current center is Mike Pouncey. Okay player, not great. This pick could be defensive tackle. It was originally Jerry Tillery. However, I changed it to Bradbury. Very good combine. I expect him to go in the first round. Tested super well. And the Chargers need to improve their offensive line for Phillip Rivers and Melvin Gordon. And I guess Austin Eckler. With the 29th pick, the Kansas City Chiefs select Byron Murphy, cornerback, Washington. I totally forgot about Murray in the last mock. Sorry about that. But I personally really like Murphy. He tested meh at the combine. Could have gone better, but he's a very high instinct player. Very good for the Washington Huskies this year. Kansas City needs help in their secondary. They just lost Steven Nelson. They cut Eric Berry, who's not a corner, but he's still in their secondary. And they also traded D. Ford. They cut Justin Houston. So the remaining parts of their not insanely good defense is gone outside of like Chris Jones Anthony Hitchens, Reggie Ragland, yeah, it's not great. They have one legit player in Chris Jones, and that's about it. And I think Murphy can be that number 2 legit player, as I think he can be a real number 1 corner in this league. The Chiefs need it. This is a great pick. With the 30th pick, the Green Bay Packers select Hakeem Butler, wide receiver, Iowa State. Butler is the poor man's DK Metcalf. Big body, very fast, 4.42 speed. He likes to go upstairs where grandma hides the cookies, and he's very similar to DK Metcalf, but just worse. The Packers need help at receiver. They have Devontae Adams, and that's about it. So improving their offense for Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur, I think, makes sense. With the 31st pick, the Los Angeles Rams select DeAndre Baker, cornerback, Georgia. The Rams don't have too many needs. I originally had Chris Lindstrom at the spot to replace Roger Saffold. However, I think Baker is a better value pick. He had a phenomenal year at Georgia, winning the Jim Thorpe Award. The Rams need a better cover corner, as Marcus Peters, I think he's pretty overrated, and Aqib Talib isn't getting any younger. So Baker doesn't need to be great right away, but in 2 or 3 years, he can be really good. With the 32nd pick, the New England Patriots select Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle from Clemson. They lost Malcolm Brown. They need someone in the interior of their defense with Danny Shelton, who isn't really that good of a player, to be honest. Wilkins is a very dominant presence, and I think Bill Belichick would have a lot of fun developing him, and I think this is a very nice pick for New England. Could be a quarterback. Daniel Jones is still on the board. However, I have Wilkins going to New England. That'll conclude the first round, but we still have another round to mock. With the 33rd pick, the Arizona Cardinals select A.J. Brown, wide receiver, Ole Miss. Good to get another weapon for their franchise quarterback in Josh Rosen. And I think that can be A.J. Brown. I think he's a first-round talent. Could go 32 to New England. However, I think Wilkins makes more sense there for them. And Brown is going to be a Cardinal. Very good route runner. Doesn't have crazy upside. Sort of like N'Keal Harry does. But I think this is a very solid pick. He can learn from one of the best in Larry Fitzgerald, and Rosen has another legit option. With the 34th pick, the Indianapolis Colts select Ja'Kai Polite, edge rusher, Florida. Polite did not have a good combine, did not test well, got injured halfway through, didn't do particularly great in interviews. However, he had a really good year at Florida. His only real year of production, making him a huge risk. However, the Colts could use help at edge rusher. Darius Leonard isn't really an edge rusher. And who else do they have? They have Jabal Sheard, good player, not getting any younger. And then Kamoko Toure from Rutgers, their second-round rookie last year. I guess. So they need someone else. And Ja'Kai Polite, while he is a risk, I think he's a good player. With the 35th pick, the Oakland Raiders select Amani Oruwariye, cornerback, Penn State. The Raiders obviously need help on their defense. We just gave them Josh Allen and Jonathan Abrams. So, yeah, maybe Mack Wilson makes more sense. They need a linebacker. However, I think Oruwariye personally is much better value, as a lot of production at Penn State, very well-rounded corner, good in man, zone, press, solid in run support, and overall, I think could be a huge addition to the Raiders secondary. They got him, Abrams, if he develops Garyon Conley, and then if he develops Carl Joseph. Solid. With the 36th pick, the San Francisco 49ers select Deontay Thompson, safety, Alabama. The rich just get richer. That defense is frightening. They got that scary front seven, and not to mention a good secondary with Richard Sherman, recently signed at Jason Barrett, Jaquiski Pop-Tart, and now Deontay Thompson. That is one of the best defenses in the NFL. The Niners have a legit shot to make the playoffs. Thompson had a really good year this year for Alabama, did not participate in the combine due to an injury, and overall is a very solid player. With the 37th pick, the New England Patriots select Daniel Jones, quarterback, Duke. Yes, the Patriots trade up and get Jones. The Giants traded up from 6 to 1, so I think it makes sense for him to trade down, get more assets. I have the Patriots receiving pick 37 and 247, which is the Giants' 7th rounder, and then the Giants get pick 56 and 74, which is New England's 3rd rounder via the Lions. Daniel Jones showed a lot of flashes at Duke, but this is a risky pick. However, he gets to sit behind one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time in Tom Brady. As Jones, okay combine, he's sort of like Locke, a well-rounded player, doesn't have any particular strengths. Showed a lot of flashes. I think he has more upside than Locke. Really good bowl game against Temple, and I think this pick makes a lot of sense for New England. Got to focus on your future. They do not have a replacement for Mr. Tom Brady. With the 38th pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Jerry Tillery, defensive tackle, Notre Dame. Tillery, very good run stopper, very good combine, and I think this is really good value at 38. The Jaguars just cut Malik Jackson, and they need someone to replace him. Tillery is a very good run stopper, can shed blocks, and good pick for the Jaguars, getting him and T.J. Hawkinson. With the 39th pick, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Mack Wilson, middle linebacker, Alabama. I'm not a huge Mack Wilson fan, but he had a pretty good career with Alabama. They lost Quan Alexander, and they need someone to replace him, and that can be Wilson, who's a very well-rounded player for the Crimson Tide. Not great at any particular skill. He's not quite the three-down linebacker that someone like Devin White is, but he's still a talented player. With the 40th pick, the Buffalo Bills select Paris Campbell, wide receiver, Ohio State. Definitely one of the weirder picks, as the Bucs have Robert Foster, an undrafted rookie from Alabama who played really well last year. They just signed Cole Beasley and John Brown to somewhat big deals, so you're probably wondering why they're getting another receiver. Well, what do all three of those guys have in common? They're not changing up the game plan for opposing defensive coordinators. They're not frightening the other team. Paris Campbell can. 4.31 speed, you can use him in a variety of ways at wide receiver, at running back, in special teams. The Bills need a dynamic playmaker in their offense who can do multiple things. He makes defensive coordinators have to think and change their game plan. Love this pick for Buffalo. It may be questioned, but I think it makes a ton of sense. With the 41st pick, the Denver Broncos select Nasir Adderley, safety, Delaware. One of the most intriguing players in this draft class, in my opinion. Adderley is super athletic, lots of production for Delaware. Yeah, they're an FCS team, but he has a lot of upside and showed potential as an NFL safety. The Broncos signed Kareem Jackson, good player, but he's more of a corner, and they could use help at safety. They have Justin Simmons, solid on a contract year. Do they still have Darian Stewart? I don't know. He's old. Adderley is raw. He doesn't need to start right away because they have decent players there. But Darian Stewart's obviously not the future, and I don't know how much they're willing to pay Simmons. So Adderley, who in my opinion is the best safety, or at least the safety with the most upside in this draft class, makes sense for Denver. With a 42nd pick, the Cincinnati Bengals select Greg Little, offensive tackle, Ole Miss. The Bengals need to improve their offensive line. And Little, who had a disappointing combine, his stock fell from mid-late first round to now probably a second-round pick. Solid production for Ole Miss, pretty athletic, and he was supposed to test somewhat well, and he obviously didn't. So I think this is a pretty good pick for Cincinnati. I would say a month ago, I would expect Little to go where Devin Bush went, and then Bush to go maybe where Little went, so I guess that's interesting. With the 43rd pick, the Detroit Lions select Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, defensive back from Florida. The Lions just signed Justin Coleman from Seattle. They have Darius Slay, they have Coleman, they have Quandre Diggs, who's solid, but they cut Golden Tate, and they need another outside corner. Gardner-Johnson is more of a safety, but he can play corner as well. I love his versatility, pretty good production at Florida, and he tested better than I expected he would, so as a Lions fan, I'd be happy with this pick too. With the 44th pick, the Green Bay Packers select Irv Smith Jr., tight end, Alabama. Smith is a very well-rounded tight end, and I really think this is good value for Green Bay, as they could have picked Noah Fant at 12, they didn't. They could have picked him at 30, didn't. But they get him at 44, which is good value. And picking Irv Smith at 30, I think, would still be good value, but getting him at 44, obviously, is even better value, along with Hakeem Butler, who could be available at 44. That's a we'll see. Smith can run block, he can pass catch, and the Jimmy Graham move didn't really work out. This move can work out. The 45th pick, the Atlanta Falcons select Elgton Jenkins, offensive lineman, Mississippi State. Jenkins had a pretty solid combine. You can play him at center, you can play him at guard, and I would say the Falcons could use guard in their offensive line. They have good tackles in Jake Matthews and Ryan Schrader. They have Alex Mack at center. He's really good, but he's also older. So Jenkins, who played center at Mississippi State, can eventually replace him. The Falcons need to work on their offensive line. And other than that, they have a very good roster. It's just a matter of executing. I had them winning the Super Bowl last year, and I think I'll have them going somewhat far again, even after a disappointing season. They definitely have the talent to do it. With a 46th pick, the Washington Redskins select Jalen Ferguson, edge rusher, Louisiana Tech. They lost Preston Smith, and they need to replace him. Get someone who can get to the quarterback, and Ferguson can definitely do that. Lots of production for Louisiana State. I believe he has the most sacks in college football history. I'm pretty sure that's the record he broke, formerly set by the now Arizona Cardinal Terrell Suggs. Ferguson played very well in his 4-year career with the Bulldogs, and he can have a very solid career in Washington. With a 47th pick, the Carolina Panthers select J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, wide receiver, Stanford. They just lost Devin Funches. They need some help at receiver. They have DJ Moore, who I like, showed flashes, but was inconsistent at times as a rookie, which is fine. But they need someone else with him. And Arcega-Whiteside, good production at Stanford, solid route runner, sort of like N'Keal Harry and A.J. Brown. Not crazy good ceiling, but good floor. Pretty good pick for Carolina. Yeah, they could use help on defense, but getting skill position players for an inconsistent, at times, Cam Newton coming off an injured shoulder makes sense. With the 48th pick, the Miami Dolphins select Joe Juwan Williams, cornerback, Vanderbilt. Disappointing combine, but he's long, he's lean. The Dolphins need a corner alongside Xavier Howard, who's one of the most underrated and one of the best corners in the NFL. Not to mention, there's many trade rumors surrounding him, and he's a free agent at the end of next year, so the Dolphins need help in their secondary. Yeah, they could get a weapon for Dwayne Haskins, but they have solid skill position players. Devontae Parker's back, Kenny Stills, Kenyon Drake, Mike Gesicki. They're not great at all, but they're serviceable. The 49th pick, the Cleveland Browns select Rocky Ya-Sin, cornerback, Temple. Obviously, the Browns do not have their first-round pick anymore with the Odell Beckham trade, and I think they could use help in their secondary. They lost Jabril Peppers. Maybe they go out and sign Eric Berry, but I think they could use another corner alongside Denzel Ward, and that can be Rocky Ya-Sin. Solid Senior Bowl, solid season. I believe he's around 6 foot, so he has pretty good size, and I think him and Ward can be a great tandem. With the 50th pick, the Minnesota Vikings select Dexter Lawrence, defensive tackle of Clemson. They just lost Sheldon Richardson, and Dexter Lawrence, big body on the interior of Clemson's defensive line. Definitely a very good run stopper. Can create double teams, which leads to more opportunities for guys like Anthony Barr, Everson Griffin, if he's still on the roster. Danielle Hunter is one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. While the Vikings obviously need to focus on their offensive line, it doesn't hurt to make their defense better. With the 51st pick, the Tennessee Titans select Jeffrey Simmons, defensive tackle, Mississippi State. They have Jarrell Casey on their D-line, who's sort of a hybrid defensive tackle, defensive end, but they need someone else in the interior of their defensive line, along with Casey, who is a very good player, very underrated, but Simmons is a huge risk. In Tennessee, they need a star on their defense. They have talented players, Adoree Jackson, Kevin Byard, Harold Landry. You can call some of them stars. They just added Brian Burns in this mock draft. You can call some of those guys stars, especially Kevin Byard, and if he has a good year, Adoree Jackson. But someone with superstar potential is Jeffrey Simmons. Phenomenal season at Mississippi State, but he has red flags off the field. I believe he hit his girlfriend or something. Don't hit women, kids. He tore his ACL before the combine, which he wasn't even invited to, might I add. So, obviously, multiple red flags. One of the biggest boomer bust prospects in this draft class. Very interesting pick for Tennessee. With the 52nd pick, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Deebo Samuel, wide receiver, South Carolina. Very good pass catcher, solid route runner. Steelers need an Antonio Brown replacement. And yes, Deebo Samuel is not Antonio Brown, but he's still a good player. Him, Juju, and James Washington could be a solid trio for Big Ben and whoever their future quarterback is, maybe Mason Rudolph. With the 53rd pick, the Philadelphia Eagles select Chris Lindstrom, guard, Boston College. I think the Eagles could work on their offensive line. Their guards are good. They have Brandon Brooks, very good player, tore his ACL in the playoff game against the Saints, and he's not getting any younger, so that's a question mark. And then their other guard, I believe, is Isaac Seumalo. I want to say they extended him, but I'm pretty sure he's also somewhat injury prone and not that great of a player. So getting depth on the offensive line and Lindstrom, who can eventually become a good player, I think makes sense for Philly. With the 54th pick, the Houston Texans select Damian Harris, running back Alabama. Lamar Miller is a good player, but they need a complement for him, and that can be Harris, who is a solid balance of agility, power, and overall athleticism. Very well-rounded player. Not going to be a star, but I think can be a good complementary option. With the 55th pick, the Houston Texans, with back-to-back selections, will take Trayvon Mullen, cornerback Clemson. Yeah, they could go offensive line, maybe like an Eric McCoy, who, hint, hint, as you can see, is the next pick. But they need help at corner. They just lost Kareem Jackson. They just lost Kevin Johnson. And I believe their only somewhat decent corner is Jonathan Joseph. He's not getting any younger. So Mullen, with a very good college football playoff, can be the selection. With the 56th pick, the New York Giants select Eric McCoy, offensive lineman from Texas A&M. He is mainly, I would say, a center, which the Giants could use as center. I'm pretty sure they have Brett Jones, who's not particularly good. And McCoy had a very good combine, lots of production for A&M, and the Giants obviously need to improve their offensive line. All they have is Nate Solder, not great. Will Hernandez, decent. They lost Jamon Brown, and their right tackle is Chad Wheeler. So it's not good in New York. You got to get some help for Kyler Murray, as Oklahoma had a very good offensive line. One of the main reasons why Kyler Murray succeeded. The Giants are going to have to do the same. With the 57th pick, the Philadelphia Eagles select Anthony Nelson, edge rusher from Iowa. They just lost Michael Bennett, and they could use some more edge rushers. They re-signed Brandon Graham, but there are a lot of rumors that they could go with one in the first round. I don't think that makes much sense, but here in the second round, I think they definitely should, especially considering that they have 2 second-round picks. And like Lindstrom, Nelson will probably be used more as depth. However, it's good to have multiple good edge rushers. They also drafted Josh Sweat last year, so a good rotation of edge rushers, I think, could be very good for Philadelphia. With the 58th pick, the Dallas Cowboys select Kelvin Harmon, wide receiver, North Carolina State. Harmon's a good red zone body. They also have Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper, so I think that can be an interesting tandem. My only question is, who's going to play the slot? Yeah. With the 59th pick, we have a big trade. The Minnesota Vikings move up. They get pick 59 and pick 201, which is the Colts 6th-rounder. And meanwhile, Indianapolis acquires cornerback Xavier Rhodes. Big trade for Indy. They need a star cornerback. They have the most cap space in the NFL. Doesn't hurt to take a risk. And I love this move for Indianapolis. And Minnesota gets to clear up cap space, make more room for guys like Mackenzie Alexander, Trey Waynes if they keep him, because there's a lot of trade rumors with him, Mike Hughes. And with this selection, they take Juan Thornhill, defensive back, Virginia. Very athletic. I believe he had the highest vertical leap in the whole combine, 44 inches. He can play safety. He can play corner. The Vikings just lost Andrew Sendejo. Harrison Smith can play both 3 and strong safety, so you can use Thornhill in a number of different places. With the 60th pick, the Los Angeles Chargers select Draymond Jones, defensive tackle, Ohio State. I did not have the Chargers going with the DT in the first round, so they have to do it here. They cut Corey Liuget. They did re-sign Brandon Mebane, but they need someone else. And getting someone who can stuff blocks, create more opportunities for Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram to get to the quarterback makes a ton of sense, and that will make the Chargers defense even scarier. With the 61st pick, the Kansas City Chiefs select Jaquan Johnson, safety Miami. The Chiefs need help in their secondary. We've already addressed it. They didn't draft a safety in the first round, and this is the Eric Berry replacement. Johnson is a hard hitter. He's sort of a poor man's Jonathan Abrams in a way, whereas obviously good in run support, hard hitting. Chiefs need to improve their defense. Their offense is pretty much set. Obviously, there are some new investigations with Tyreek Hill. However, their offense is still really good with or without him. Maybe they'll not be as good as they were last year without him, so hopefully Tyreek Hill didn't do anything wrong. Seems like a good guy, makes YouTube videos. Fun player. With the 62nd pick, the New Orleans Saints select Caleb Wilson, tight end UCLA. The Saints could use a tight end. Who was their tight end last year? I'm pretty sure Dan Arnold got a lot of tight end reps. I know most of you are asking, who the heck is that? Exactly. The Saints need a bona fide tight end, and that can be Caleb Wilson. Very athletic, sort of a poor man's Noah Fant in a way, as sort of a very nice vertical threat. I think could be very useful for Drew Brees in that offense. With the 63rd pick, we have a trade as the Chicago Bears are moving up. They do not have a first or second round deal thanks to the Khalil Mack trade. Actually, they lost their second rounder last year in the draft to move up and draft Anthony Miller, the receiver from Memphis. So for the first time in this series, the Bears make a pick. They trade with Kansas City, who gets the Bears' 2020 second-round pick, as well as the Bears' fourth-rounder. So the Chiefs now have 3 2020 second-round picks, their own. They have the Niners' second-round pick in 2020 because of the D Ford deal, and now this one. And remember, they have the Rams' second-rounder this year, which is Jaquan Johnson. So they still get themselves a second-round pick. Actually, wait, no. 61 is their own pick. 63 is the Rams' pick. Okay. So this is the pick acquired in the Marcus Peters deal. With this selection, the Bears take Michael Dieter, offensive lineman from Wisconsin. The Bears want to improve their offensive line for Mitchell Trubisky, Tariq Cohen, and Jordan Howard if he's still on the team. I could see it someone like Philadelphia trading for him. If not, then I think the Eagles will obviously get Josh Jacobs, as you can see. But the Bears want to improve their offensive line. They have decent players inside, like Cody Whitehair. I'm pretty sure Kyle Long is still somewhat decent. Go Ducks. So, solid pick for Chicago. And then with the 64th pick, the New England Patriots select Taylor Rapp, safety, Washington. The Patriots did not give this pick up in the trade up to get Daniel Jones. So, Rapp, solid player for Washington, as he had a lot of production for the Huskies this past season. The Patriots love to run multiple safeties. Devin McCourty, Duron Harmon, and Patrick Chung are all on the wrong side of 30. McCourty contemplated retirement, and while Rapp won't have a huge role this year, he has solid upside and could be a nice player down the line for New England. So that'll end the video. I hope you all enjoy. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. I will be streaming the LFL at around 6 p.m. Eastern Time, so if you want to check that out, make sure to subscribe, and have a good weekend.